Welcome to Thursday, or I hope your Thursday is continuing apace because some of you are east of me.
That is true.
We have a lovely, small, good-looking, intelligent group of people joined here today to talk about connected data and trusted knowledge with Paula at Akamai. And what else is going on? Anybody else need to check in about anything before we launch in here? I think Paula, you can take it
No.
away. Remind me
But
when this conversation started.
um okay. So when did this conversation I'll just shift slides here. So this conversation, so this is really me and Christina floating some ideas with our very trusted, intelligent group of consortium people. These ideas started back when probably this time last year when I was trying to think about 2023 planning. And then I roped Christina in to help me wrestle with some of these concepts through Q1 of last year, and they've been around for us for a while. So, and then we talked about it, Kelly, at the member summit. And I said, I wonder, based on some of the discussions that had happened there, I felt like, oh, I'd love to sit with a few people and see what they think about this stuff. So that's kind of where all this started. And so should I just jump in or should we wait another
Uh,
minute? What do you think?
I say
Go ahead.
dive on in. Yeah.
Dive on in. All right. Okay. And I will tell everybody I'm sitting in an office. Scott Gentry, actually sitting in Money's office here in Westford. So I only have one little screen, which is crazy, but so I can't see everybody's faces. I can see some people's faces. So you'll have to speak up. Okay. So
And do
just to,
you want people, I'm going to ask this question by interrupting you. Would you like people to interrupt you with questions
um,
or comments, or do you want to wait
so
or put them in the chat?
I guess I'll talk about that. The this sort of has a story flow to it. So I'd like to go through some of it, but there are these natural stopping points. So I think there's about 25 minutes of content total, but I'm going to stop at a bunch of spots every 3 slides or so. It seems like there's like this natural storytelling stop that I'd love to get some feedback from people. And then there'll be time for discussion at the end. Does that sound okay?
It's great to me.
All
Great.
right. So I want to introduce myself. I think a lot of people know me. Everybody knows Christina. Christina is sort of my partner in crime on this. I am newly the director of GS Operations Digital Strategy and Programs. The name was just minted last week. I'm super excited about it. But I have been at Akamai for 5 years. Christina's been here for 4. And I was working with just the support organization, which was a huge organization in and of itself. And about 4 months ago, we were both moved to the GS organization. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second, where we're placed in the org. So that's myself and Christina. I think most people know Akamai, but I always prefer when people bring up a little bit about the company they work for. So Akamai is not exactly a household name, but we are sort of plumbing for the internet, if you want to call it that, security for the internet. And we're about 10K employees worldwide. And then where Christina and I sit in the organization is global services is made up of professional services, customer success, and support. And up to 4 months ago or 5 months ago, we were within the support pillar of services, but now we've been brought up to do operations at the GS level. So all of the functions within services. And we are the digital strategy team. We're about 25 people that have been brought together to do what we do. Okay. So why are we here today? This is just bringing back sort of the syllabus of what we talked about, Kelly, that we were going to talk about today. The real sort of bait for this was your richest opportunities for scale and transformation will elude you until you focus on some fundamentals. So that's kind of the promise of what this presentation is. We can loop back and see if we met it, but that's kind of what I'd like to talk about at the end. And so we'll go through 4 sections. We'll talk about a little bit about maturity, our previous maturity model that we were working on, shift left, which is something I can't see all the people on here, but I know Ryan Matthews, Monique gave us a great presentation on this, what they're doing at Ping back in March. So a little bit about shift left, a little bit of a reality check, which I think some of us are feeling right now. And this is what happened when I was doing some thinking back in the February timeframe, and then a way forward. So those are the sections. So just a little bit of a look back. I started with Akamai in 2018. And one of the very first things that we did with the leadership team, and Scott Gentry can speak to this. I think you were in the room when we had this meeting, but we were meeting with Charlie, and there was a lot of talk about where we should focus our attention. And at that time, I introduced the concept of maturity models to the business. And it was very simple. It was like, we do reactive support. It was sort of a left to right model. It was like, we should think about any opportunities we have from being completely reactive to being more proactive or informed, more preventative, more intelligent. And that's sort of the model that we started with 5 years ago. And it was really good. The leadership really liked it because it was a way of thinking about how to push the needle on some things that we were thinking about. So that has been around for 5 years, and we've done a ton of projects in that time. Some of these will be really familiar. Monique was here for a lot of them. Akapedia was really at the very bottom. That was even before my time. Knowledge-driven problem management, swarming, intelligent swarming. So there were a lot of projects that we did, and we sort of tried to think about how we could progress them. The way the maturity model helped was, how could we push that even further? So I'll give you one example. So some of you on this call may have seen a demo of Cerebro, which was Jackson McKenzie just brainstorm, which was, for those of you that haven't seen it, it was a very intelligent sort of view of all the cases that are open in the system, prioritized red, yellow, green by a whole bunch of intelligence and data in the background. And so that project came out of, we were asked originally to do a quality program. So Amit Singh came to me and said, we need to do a quality program. The leadership wants to do quality. And my first thing with all of the maturity thinking in the back of my mind was, well, quality happened yesterday. The case is closed. So quality programs have a really great role in terms of coaching employees and understanding how you're doing, but they don't help you in the minute. And so my press back to him, with a maturity thinking in mind was, if we're going to invest time in doing something, why don't we do something that talks about the quality of the cases that are open today, and trying to give managers and employees a view of things that are getting hot and float those to the top. So we had this big discussion. There was a big whiteboard discussion between Jackson and I, and he went home that weekend. I'm not kidding. Came home with a prototype for Cerebro. And that's an example of how maturity models can take what you're trying to do, the problem you're trying to solve, and push them even further. So you get more value out of it. So you're thinking even beyond the original ask. So that was a great example. So this is what we've been doing for the last 5 years. The leadership teams I've been working with, we've been working with, are very used to this. And however, beginning like late 2022 into 2023, I started to notice that we were doing planning for this coming year, the year that we're in right now, and the conversation was changing. We were coming out of COVID, and there was a ton of pressure. So a lot of companies made a lot of money. They closed down, facilities, and we saved a ton of money. We reapplied that to resourcing. We reapplied it to, like many tech companies, reapplied it to M&As. And now all of a sudden things are opening up again. Also, some companies are looking at shrinking their spend. So the conversation really started to change. I started to hear even more than ever about things like efficiency, scale, saving money, adding more value to the customer. All these discussions we always hear, but they seem to be more intense. And what started to sort of keep me up at night was, how do I help the leaders? How do I help us, my team, the leaders, really prioritize what we should be focused on in 2023 and 2024? And the maturity model that we have been working with, reactive, proactive, reactive, informed, preventative, and intelligent, I felt like it was getting kind of stale. So this is where we enter shift left. Now this has been around for a while. Everybody probably knows shift left. So the history of shift left was really a QA context. Before I go here, actually, I wanted to pause for a split second here. I should go back. Is anybody else, I can't see everybody's screen. I mean, thumbs up or comment. Is anybody else feeling like there's a different urgency in the leadership discussions and what they're asking for? Not really. No? I see a nod.
Yes.
Just a yes. Just a yes. Okay.
There's at least 3 thumbs up happening.
Okay. I get. Okay.
Did somebody else come off mute? I couldn't see.
No.
Well, I did just say, I love this slide for its simplicity and the fact that you could have 1,000 talk tracks based on the inflection point and the shifts that took place across the organization, across the environments, across the technology, across everything, right? Like, there has been such a dramatic shift since 2020.
And you were talking about this last week,
right?
Matt. Yeah. Actually, I should bring that up because you were talking about this and sort of this change, this seed change, even in the technology. So you're right, there's a million talk points, and you can thank Christina for the simple design of this slide. So, okay. So enter shift left. So back to my talk track here, which is that shift left is not new. It's been around for years, but the general premise, it started out in QA, which is if you find a problem earlier, it's going to save you money. If you wait to let the customers find it in the field, it's going to cost more time, more money, right? So that was the premise. Back, when I was first introduced to the consortium was showing shift left. Now this is value erosion, but the same thing, if you put dollar signs on the right-hand side of this axis, it's, you could say the dollar signs go up, as the customer is coming to the right here. And the value stays higher if you're more to the left. So this was an example of a shift left model. And I've actually used this with my leadership to say, this is not new thinking. This has been around for a while. We've been talking about it because Monique had shown this to leadership way back when. So I think when we were implementing intelligent swarming. So this is a shift left model. So in general, the way these shift left models work is they all kind of not look the same, but they're tailored to the language that your business is using, but they often talk about shifting left from fully assisted channels to digital support to prevention. And the further you go to the right, the more dollar signs you have. The further you go to the left, the more money you save, and life is all really good. And that's sort of the dream. And I've seen all kinds of good, like Monique gave a great presentation, again, what they're doing at Ping. I've seen, I think, Ryan Matthews' presentation through Gartner, and then Gartner has some stuff. Gartner has some brand new stuff that Scott Gentry and I saw last 2 weeks ago. They're calling it their reimagined strategy, but it effectively is prevention on the left, all the way to fully assisted on the right, and some channel distribution. So a lot of really, really great thinking around there. unfortunately, when I started to think, oh, well, we should throw out our old maturity model and just go with a digital shift left model, I came up with a whole bunch of speed bumps. I call them my speed bumps, basically, in my thinking. One, and the biggest one is the one on the right here, which is, well, not everything can shift to the left. We're releasing new products all the time. Customers are paying us a lot of money for assisted support. Customers pay us a lot of money for managed services where we're watching eyes on glass, if you want to think about it that way. They're paying us for that. And that's assisted support. And so that can never really go away. So that was my first speed bump. My other speed bump was we have a lot of difficulty in shifting left because of some of these other challenges that you see in orange. So I was like, I don't know if I can just, this doesn't solve all the problems just to tell this story. And also I felt like we were leaving something on the table by just talking about shifting the channels kind of thing. So how do we move forward? How do I merge the old thinking, which my leadership was really familiar with, and they really like it. They talk about it. They use those words, sort of embed sort of the digital shift left thinking, and then also maybe help find a way to talk about some of these speed bumps that I know are going to make it really challenging. So this is another Christina diagram. Christina and I worked on this, I don't know, like 3 or 4 years ago. This is a Sankey sort of visualization of that we were doing with the leadership around demand and trying to understand how our support demand is all the way over to the left. That's all the demand that customers have. And then as they move through, if we can do product self-service, then they don't ever come to support. If we can do digital support, they don't ever land at services. And how do we divide that up and look at the channel distribution of where customers are receiving support? This is a support context. Conveniently, if you overlay the beautiful digital shift left stuff, this is really just a digital shift left model, really, right? The most expensive touch points are way over on the right and the cheapest ones are way over on the left. So this was super awesome. This was like, wow, our leadership already knows this diagram. And so overlaying sort of the digital shift left buckets is going to be really easy transition. We're already talking about shift left, which is what I mean. So we called this the where part of sort of shift left. But what this doesn't talk about is how do we mature? There's a lot of opportunity way in the right here in these assisted channels to make things more digitally enabled, where you're still dealing with an assisted channel, but I might have a cobot, or I might have some large language model that's helping me write my response emails or my RCAs. So it's still sort of assisted, but there's a ton of opportunity in there. So how do we talk about those pieces? So basically we took the original maturity model and said, you know what, this is really a how story. No matter where you are in the digital journey, no matter where you are in the, how assisted you are versus unassisted, you're really striving about how you handle that interaction. And so we took the original maturity model that we had and we just flipped it on its head and basically said, if you're reactive, it's the most expensive. And if you're preventative, it's the least expensive. And we called this the how axis. So didn't want to throw away this thinking because it was so embedded still in some of the culture. So we managed to figure out a way to keep both, try and keep the best of both worlds. And so we think about shifting left in 2 ways. Where are we handling the interaction on these digital channels? And within the right channel, whatever that right channel is, how are we handling it? Are we being as intelligent, as automated, as informative as possible? And so I think I've heard people at the consortium, and we've heard out in the industry talked about context, where context is more valuable than process, than UI, meaning if I'm an analyst and I pick up the phone and I have a really great UI, it may not be as valuable as if I pick the phone and the last interactions of this account pop up for me, or this account is in the middle of a renewal, or this account is a, top tier account. So the context might actually be more important than the UI. So how, that's a little bit about the how and not the where. So this was super helpful to us. I'll pause here. Does this resonate with anybody?
Definitely, and I'm very envious of the PowerPoint skills exhibited here.
Great. Well, you call Christina. Call me. I did some of it. Christina did a lot of it.
For a low fee, I am willing to do slides for other people.
For anybody. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's work on that.
Yeah. Okay. So, the great news was this solved the first stop sign that you saw in the previous drawing. My first speed bump was gotten over, like not everything can shift to a digital channel, and that's not the right thing. So what was great about that was that shift left can be added to our existing maturity model to give us a shorthand. What's helpful about that is it gives us a shorthand. Anybody who's used shift left, and I can't see Monique, but I'm sure she's nodding. Shift left can give us a really nice shorthand for speaking with leadership. This is a shift left motion. When they hear shift left, they think cheaper, which is, more efficient, not necessarily cheaper, but more efficient. And so that's a shorthand that we can use as operations people to help leaders prioritize programs. So that's really helpful. However, we have all these other issues. And these speed bumps are about how hard it's going to be to shift left, right? And so what I was really trying to look for was, how can I have language that helps us, again, a shorthand, so that when I say those things, leadership knows maybe it's going to be challenging. Maybe we have to do some foundational work. So you can see legacy systems, silos, data silos, knowledge content silos. We have some knowledge bases that don't use KCS, and so they're not very trusted. They're not ready for AI applications yet. We have legacy products. We have taxonomy issues like everybody. So how can I, instead of saying, oh, here's the shiny thing, let's move to the left, and then go, oh yeah, but we got to fix all this stuff. How can I create some language and some awareness internally so that they know we have to go back and do this work, and we don't have to fight the battle every time? Does this make sense to people? No?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had one observation you talked early in your deck about like your new role is beyond support, include professional services and these other functions. And your shift left presentation still feels support heavy, and it's about lowering cost as opposed to like customer success or value realization for a customer. And I think and I speak to that because I'm kind of trying to do KCS in the sales world. And that's one of the big shifts we've had to make is it's not that if all I do is show them how they're going to save a few dollars in selling, they don't care. They want to win deals. So what I have to do is show them about customer success, which helps you to sell more and be successful in the context of what you care about. And I'm just curious how that plays into your thinking about this as you take the broader role.
I think it's perfect. It's 100% true. So this presentation has not been brought forward into a full CS context, but we do talk a smidgen about value at the end, and I'll talk about that, but you are 100%. That's the other side of that coin of the coin, almost, if you want to think about it. And yeah, we have to be looking at which touch points have the most value. So I do have a little bit there. And Christina and I have been talking about how we have to take those Sankey diagrams and actually just use it in a more broad customer journey way. But I 100% agree with you. I'm so glad you brought that up, and I'm glad you're recording, Kelly, because that's a super important point for anybody who's listening.
So Mitch, I was going to actually meet with Arnson today to talk about if there's people that are like, I'd love to get a working group going of people who are trying to do KCS outside of the traditional support function. We've had a couple of calls here and there, but I just feel like there's so many differences that it would be great to really start to build, you know, a corpus of knowledge around that application, because you do have to think a little bit differently when you're not in the support function.
Couldn't agree more. And Dave Stewart, I think, is part of looped into that. He is trying to work with us. We're standing up a PS knowledge base, but you know, it's all brand shiny and new for professional services, and it's not co-located with our support knowledge, unfortunately. So it is a silo, but we'll
Yeah.
deal with that later. But it is, I'm very keen to have him help build a practice there. And I think, to your
Yeah.
point, it's going to be really different. Those people and how they operate are very different, and how we incent them, you know, value wise.
Yeah, it's so true. It's a slightly
Oh, there's
different
Dave.
paradigm. It's as much shift up, shift out, shift near. You know, there's different drivers, kind of after the same sorts of things, but subtly and significantly different in different measures.
So I'd like to interject. I want to connect two dots here, Paula. The first one is how you talk about shift left and make it more than just a cost savings question. I think one of the things that you have to be able to draw an executive picture that they can get their minds around is, what is the total cost to implement and serve a brand new customer for year one? Just bound it like that. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to help the business grow in a scalable way. And the simple truth is, boil it down, for every brand new customer we got, I've got to add 1.2 headcount for every 100 new customers. I mean, there's a ratio that's there, and it's legitimate and it's defensible. And so over time, we'd like to grow 2,000 customers before I have to add a headcount and a half, right? And so there's that notion, I think. The other notion is that the continuum of professional services that sets up and implements and deploys a brand new customer, and the ability of the support team to well support that customer, those two things are hard linked. But sadly, professional services, which is a time-bounded engagement and margin-centric focus and get in and get out, and a lot of those people are paid to play, so they're not likely to share their knowledge because they want to get all the billable hours and the glory and. I've worked a couple different companies as a leader to combine professional services and support into a single KCS practice, and it's the only way to go. It is the only way to go. If they build their own knowledge base, there's so many things there that could add value to the support teams. And more importantly, 70% value from the support teams over to professional services of what not to do, how not to configure, how not to deploy. So having a uniform approach to KCS is, I think, important. But back to the reward and recognition system, you just got to be mindful of, you know, these guys are coin vending operating machines, and they pay to play.
I would actually even argue taking it back 2 levels, like taking it back into how do we design our product and product management? How do we sell our product and position it in the market? How do we implement it? Is it consistent with the way we designed it and sell it? And then how do we support it? And that whole life cycle and that ecosystem, having a common language, a common way to talk about it, a common knowledge base.
Yes, and that piece, I mean, so I agree with both immensely, and I'm new. I've been in PS in my past lives, but I'm new to the ops role, and it's interesting, Brad, to your point around pay to play. I've talked about creating efficiencies or converting certain touch points that aren't really high value when they're in person, converting those touch points to a digital, because they might have the same or more value.
Sure.
To the customer. So a little bit of what you're saying too, Patrick. And the feedback I get is, well, we get paid less if we do that. I'm like, well, it gives us opportunity to do other things. So the conversation, like learning how this conversation works with them, has been really, like, you're both saying the same thing. And then Patrick, to your point around further upstream around product design. One of the big problems we've had, one of these stop signs was around prevention or product improvement or product self-service. And I'll talk about it in a minute in the second part of this, which is we have not been able to really influence, we're a 20-year-old company. We have a lot of 25-year-old company, actually. We have a lot of technical debt, and trying to convince them to sort of change how the products, evolve how the products are implemented based on what we're seeing downstream is difficult without data.
Mhm.
So let me get into the second part of this, because this is all definitely dovetails in. So I just have a few more slides. So by way of trying to unlock sort of these other speed bumps, which were things, these knowledge content silos, these data silos, these legacy systems, business silos where the products organization might not be listening to us because we have all this anecdotal information about what customers are experiencing. I was trying to figure out how can I develop some shorthand language, sort of like shift left, because but shift left doesn't get at these problem statements. So started drawing out on a piece of paper these two sides of shift left. So there's shift left from the customer's perspective and the value, their touch points. And then there's these employee experience touch points. And I literally, this was on a piece of paper at one point. And it was like, product self-service, like how do we enable things that happen in assisted support? How do we shift that to product support? How do we convince the products organization? How do we enable our employees to more easily do problem management so that we have, so that we can influence the products organization? How do we do some digital, move things from fully assisted to sort of a digital support model that will have value for the customers that they will enjoy interacting with, so that our people have more time. So I was just sort of, and there are a lot of capabilities here that are not listed, but it was just sort of jotting down some of the top ones that we were trying to enable. And so then tried to think about where those speed bumps were to getting us there. And the themes that came up were two things, sort of this connective tissue, all of the speed bumps that you saw on the previous slide. And I think this came up on last week's leadership call, data, last week's executive summit for the consortium. This came up a ton. I think where, I was thinking 6 months ago, we've all gotten there because of AI, because of these AI discussions, but those speed bumps are all related to one of two things. It's either we don't have the trusted knowledge to allow us to shift left, or we don't have the connected data. And connected data means I can draw a through line from the number of cases or the number of hours that it takes me to implement a solution, or the number of times the number of time it takes a customer to configure something, or how often a customer needs to call us to configure something for them. I don't have a through line from those interactions to the products in a really high quality way, such that I can influence the products organization and say, this is costing customers this many hours. This is costing us this many hours. This could be so much more clean, such a better experience. So all of those speed bumps that I was talking about, which is impeding us from shifting left, either a channel or how we do things to more elegant ways, were all related to either our data or our knowledge. So we coined these two terms internally as trusted knowledge and connected data, and I started using those. So when we're talking about shift left motions, I will say, well, we don't have the connected data to be able to make that motion. So that really stuck with the leadership team. I've had several people from IT and other groups come back to me and say, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say we don't have the connected data. We don't. So I've had people use it back to me, which tells me that it's kind of getting sticky, which is giving us that shorthand that we were looking for. So the idea is that you need to think about how you shift where you're handling things, also how you're handling things within channels. And then the only way that you're going to get there is if we have trusted knowledge and connected data. So this has become a really strong shorthand for us. People have already started to use it. And so where it's been helpful has been when people are going to have a discussion, like for example, we were doing Slack implementation. We've been doing some stuff around incident management most recently. And I'll be like, well, we can't do that in a silo, because if we do that in a silo, we won't ever be able to show customers that on the community. We won't ever be able to use that information to create personalized experiences. Those are shift left desired motions. We don't have the connected data to do it, or we don't have the trusted knowledge to do it. So these have become good shorthands for us. So before I move on, how does that, I mean, that's sort of the realization we're all coming to, but we had started introducing it maybe a few months ago, and it's really kind of stuck.
I also feel like it's a super important conversation to be having and to get understanding on, as everyone starts with their, well, why don't we just implement AI, right?
Yeah.
The AI motions rely on this same stuff, and to get people to understand that it's not just something you flip a switch and suddenly you're more intelligent. It still needs to consume data. It still needs that trusted knowledge source. So I feel like getting an understanding of this is like more urgent now than ever. We've been talking about this kind of stuff. I think everybody on this call has been talking about connected data, and maybe not using that term, but the importance of connected data and the importance of trusted knowledge forever. It's a foundation. It's not the sexy, shiny thing. It's a foundational thing you have to work on, and trying to get the commitment to do that work to enable new shiny things is really hard to do, but I think it's like more important now than ever.
Yeah. It's like the good news for all of us who've been trying to do things the right way for so long.
Yeah.
Now you can't do the new shiny thing.
See, yeah, I told you guys. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Guys.
There's man, this one slide could turn into 20 so quick. It's exciting. It's a great slide. It's really
It's one
telling.
of your superpowers, Brad.
It's telling it. Yeah. I'm
Turning
seeing
one slide
fractals.
into 20.
I'm seeing
Yeah.
fractals here. Big
Yeah.
fractals.
Yeah.
There's metadata around each one of those 3 pillars for sure. That's
Yeah.
really important. But then also I think there's a huge set of data, which is the know me factor
Yeah.
of the end user. Who is this person? What's their job? What's the task they're trying to do? How mature are they on an arc of expert versus novice? And what's the problem presented to them? And how do they know how to get help? Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a body of knowledge that you're going to continue to grow, because hyper personalization is the secret grease that makes shift left possible.
Yep. You're 100% right. I mean, Scott and I were at a Gartner presentation 2 weeks ago, and they call it shape the present. I thought that was such a great name, right? Right. I mean, Brad. So it's like personalization, hyper personalization. It's shape. They call it shape the present. I thought, that's a great name. So, really, this has been really powerful. It has really already, since I've been using it. We have one big project that we're working on here around incident management, and the ask was 2 years ago. We had some problems with incidents, and the underlying problem was because we did not have any connected data. We did not have a single record of truth, and so we had all the swivel chairing and people internally. And the problem statement that came to me was, our customers don't know what's going on. And I was like, after I did like about a month and a half of interviews with people and really tried to understand, I was like, customers don't understand because we don't understand. The other side of the coin. And I think it was Ryan Matthews on one of his presentations who said, the employee experience is just the other side of the customer experience. So, and it's 100% true. I believe our employees should know before our customers. Our employees should be the hero of the story. not that we, you know, sometimes focusing on the customer experience, really, I'm a huge proponent that the employees should have access to this information if the customers do. And they should have access to that and more. But so you know, this drawing is super helpful for me with my teams and helping them design solutions and push the envelope a little bit. But that incident management thing, it really came down to, we didn't have connected data. So we did, I think the first 8 months of the project was creating a single system of truth from which we could create a whole bunch of automations and integrations outward, a lot of alerting, a lot of like some custom application dashboards for the leadership. And they're actually applications, they're more than dashboards, but we've been able to build on that architecture. And you know, that's the connected data story now now we're just getting, you know, all kinds of stuff. So that's been really exciting. Okay, where are we on time? Because I have a couple more slides and we're already kind of, so now what?
Can I make one observation, Paula, which is just, I'm noticing just in my own heart, Sarah and I've been talking a lot about our business hearts lately. So in my business heart, I'm noticing what a strong, positive emotional reaction I have to trusted knowledge and connected data. Like it does not surprise me that those are sticky, because I have some innate sense of what you mean when you say trusted knowledge and what you might mean when you say connected data. And I might be able to play a part in that. And what I do not have an emotional response about is shift left. And so what I'm thinking about is, and I know that shift left is sticky and that's fine, but I'm wondering if you're having conversations cross-functionally in the organization, if there's a way to find some stickier language about what shift left means in this scenario for you in this, or, you know, in this part of the organization is actually like these two words, which involve lowering customer effort for this little bit, or actually increasing margin for this part of the organization, right? So I know that we all love the shorthand of shift left, but this to me is really exposing how little I care about the words shift left. I don't know really what, like, I guess we want to shift left, but
but why? It doesn't automatically seem valuable.
It's not actionable to me.
The other words that we throw around are that we sometimes, Christina, you know, hears me say this a lot, but I throw on the word, like, if we can make it simple and increase the sort of the value of things for either the employee or the customer. If you're going to make it simpler and more valuable, you're probably shifting left, because the ultimate simplicity is it doesn't happen. It didn't happen in the first place, or I could do it myself. The more elegant and simple, simplicity scales, you know, the whole thing there. So I wonder, I mean, I love that you're pressing on that, because, you know, the words I go to are not shift left. The words I go to are simplify and value. And I love that you brought it up, Patrick, because I hadn't talked about it before, but I talk a lot about it. I'm like, what has value to the employee is that context. When I answer the phone, who is this customer? What's going on in their lives right now? You know, that has real value to me, and I can use it in the moment. I can use it right now. That shape the present, I guess. I want to talk about that. That's really interesting. Okay, I'm going to make sure I get through the last slides here, because we're up against the time, which I love all the discussion. So now what? So how do we decide? How do we use this, which was the original promise? Like, how do we use this in conversations with our leadership about what we have to do to shift left or simplify or add value? How do we use this? What do we do first? How do we prioritize? And this is Christina's slide, more data. And this came up on the Consortium executive summit. And then it also came up at Gartner. Gartner is a huge theme, data. We need this connected data, not just any data. We need connected data. We need through lines from what happened to the customer, to who they are, all of that. And the through lines are the connections, and that's what's powerful. This is maybe the only place you'll see value Patrick, in this whole presentation, but I have a whole nother section of this where I've been starting to try and pick apart sort of what's the value to the customer of certain motions so that we can prioritize. And so we do a really good job just to talk about the kinds of data. We have a lot of KPIs. This tends to be where we focus, this top left here, which is financials and KPIs. And I think we have a good understanding of that. At least at Akamai, I'd like to focus more on the customer sentiment, not just at the end of the transaction, but in the process of the transaction. And so we're going to do some customer journey mapping. We're just at the beginning of thinking about this stuff. And behaviors, like what are the preferred behaviors? And I know there's probably some of you that are further ahead of us in this. Customer behaviors, employee behaviors, you know, employees have a hard time doing things. You know, part of that incident management thing was like, yeah, it's hard for our customers, but it's impossible for our employees. So our employees are, you know, very, very happy right now. And so they're able to be the hero of the customer's story, which is what I'm always trying to enable. So this is just sort of the data, trying to expand how you think about the data, try and look at the customer sentiment, what value have things had, and what are the behaviors of the customers and the employees? What are the employees trying to do? They're 100% of the time trying to do the right thing. So if that's hard, if there's friction, that's where we need to start mining that for how do we prioritize? So that's this, it's just in the beginning. This I thought was really interesting. I thought I'd share it with you. It's just, you know, there's a million different ways to draw pictures, to draw shift left, to draw data models. We saw this for the first time a week and a half ago, and I thought it was really good, actually. And there's that shape the present word. So I just thought I'd share it with you, and you can pick at it or go look for some more information from it. I thought it was really good because the first horizon is really just reactive data, like just capture your data. And then the second horizon is predict the future. None of this is going to work if none of this data is connected. So, you know, sort of back to that statement. But if this data is connected, as you collect more of it and as you have more of it, then it's really going to be powerful. So I just thought I'd share that with you and go looking for it. So I'm going to summarize, and then I think we can use the last 5 minutes for discussion, or 10 minutes, which is, I think about this as the long game. Whenever I think about programs, I think about how can we chip away at that foundational problem that continues to shift left, like don't solve problems in silos. So with my team, with the leadership team, when a problem comes to me, I'm like, how can we push this a little bit further? How can we simplify more or add more value? They're asking us to solve this little problem, but how could we make that, you know, shift it left or add more value? Think a little bit bigger, think a little bit broader. So there's that, push the boundaries in both how this interaction is handled and where it's handled. And then second, everything we touch. So we're not going to go off and solve the whole database problem tomorrow. All of us know that it's complex, it's weedy. There's a million, if somebody could have done it, it would have been done by now. If it was easy to do, someone already would have done it. So, you know, just trying to say this is not easy work, but if you're going to touch this little part of the ecosystem, make sure it's connected. So you're creating connections, every single thing you touch. And then we touch this, we make this better, and we make it more connected to the data around it, to the experiences around it, and then everything, measure behavior and value. So when you're building a new thing, make sure it's measurable. So many times we build capabilities, they don't have strong measures, they don't have strong connections to the ecosystem around them. So these are the 3 principles, you know, I try and get our team to design by, and it's been really powerful. So if you do that, I think you trust the process, eventually you're going to hit a tipping point. Every time it's going to get a little bit easier because you connected this to that. And now next time this and that can help you get the next thing. So what we see a lot of is, you know, there's way off to the left here. I don't know where this drawing came from, this simplicity drawing, but I think about it all the time. Yes, we can solve the problem they asked us for. Great, but it's not connected to anything else, so it doesn't help. We can solve the problem and maybe, connected to some things, but we still have these very large silos. I think this middle area is where a lot of us live. And then really what you see all the way to the right on that connected dots drawing is just when you start to connect things, eventually you're going to have more and more connections. Like, I don't know how many of you people play board games or play there's so many games that once you have so many things on the board, it's almost impossible not to connect the dots anymore. They just go blah, blah, blah. So what was that game, that computer game with the fruits that would drop whatever that was.
Fruit Ninja.
Fruit Ninja or something like that. It was just like, that is an example of once you get enough connected, everything drops into place. And so chip away at the process, trust the process, trust that if you design something well over here and over here, suddenly you might find more connections and you're going to hit a tipping point. And each point my experience is that the leadership trusts your advice that much more. So that's it. That's what we had. So this isn't a lot of new thinking because we've all been talking about data. We've all been talking about shift left. So there isn't a ton of new stuff in here, but it was, it helped me think about how at Akamai we could, in the context that I live in, that we could help.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all see ourselves in. You're right. I mean, we've been having discussions around these things in the consortium for a long time. What I am finding so powerful about the way you outlined it is the simplicity of the message is where the power comes from. I mean, it is super easy to follow. And as Kelly pointed out, I think with little tweaks, right, this can be applied to any level of executive, the employees, the knowledge workers. I mean, anybody. I mean, I think it's a great slide deck. I love it.
It only took about 4 months to build. Because yeah, and it's the same thing. It is that data, but the terminology seems to be sticky, and it seems to be setting the right expectations with the leadership, that some things that in order to do this, we're going to need to do these things, which all of us in this room are probably super excited about because we've been saying it forever. So anybody else have things like that they're using with their leadership that are similar, that is sort of gaining traction, that is, it could be totally different, but I know, Monique, you had some really great success. Like your CEO was talking about shift left after you showed just one part of a small presentation. They were like, yes, they were totally on board.
Yeah, and I didn't realize that it was broken down by the where and the how, right? And when you pointed, when you said, oh, there's really two ways to approach this. It's not just this linear process of moving left, right? There's two dimensions to it. I was just like, oh my goodness, like that makes sense. And it's easier, I think, to tell that story when people kind of understand that. And so they, yeah, to your point, like, and I think, but what the strong point on this is that education, right? Whether you come up with something sticky, how you tell the story to get your executive buy-in, there's that constant effort and that education that you have to provide to them. Otherwise, you're not going to make progress in anything. And I think that's where, like, at Akamai, you guys are so good at doing that. And like, you can give Christina and Paula like the most complex thing, and they can take it and do that whole simplification. Here's the story, and suddenly, like, you'd understand brain surgery. And so I think that's part of the superpowers that you guys have. And so I love hearing you talk, and it also makes me like, man, I miss working with you guys so much.
Well, let's just get on more calls like this, because I loved the executive summit last week. I came away pretty fired up.
How do you keep from getting exhausted though, with like like the constant going
The
back to
constant beating
leadership?
of your head against the wall, you mean?
Yeah.
We do a lot of pivoting and testing out does this diagram resonate? Does this messaging resonate? And honestly, it may be different for everybody's organization. You have to kind of try and understand what kind of messaging is going to stick. I mean, trusted knowledge and connected data sounds great, but maybe it's not something that your leadership finds important. So what are the terms that they're using in some of their thinking, and how can you add that to your messaging? That's a lot of the, months of tossing things back and forth.
Yeah, waking up the first thing in the morning and drawing something on a piece of paper.
Mhm.
Literally, that literally happened. And most of it came because, in our roles, and in my role, it's like, how can I make the leadership really feel like I've thought through this? Like, it's not just the next best whiz bangy thing. Like, this is really based in our experience, my experience of, and really not have to go back and prove myself every time. So Lynette, to your point, if the investment of time allows me to get a project approved more quickly in the way that I know we need to do it, like that Skywriter project was the first 8 months was really just all foundational work, and there was nothing sexy for the employees, nothing. It was all for like this group of 10 people. But those 10 people, once they were empowered, so that I was trying to find a way that I didn't have to do the hard sell every time. So maybe the lexicon, or use the lexicon of images and the lexicon of words that we use internally could help me not have to explain it so much every time, because there was a connective tissue that they were all kind of the same thing. Those speed bumps were the same every time. That's what I kept thinking. And so that's why maybe this investment was good. And if I can save anybody else, put your own words, your own images to it. I think your own colors, your corporate colors, whatever the case may be. I think it's helpful to all of us in this industry.
I think that the other thing that we try and do with programs that I don't think is explicitly mentioned in here is the sales pitch isn't, can you approve this thing I want to do? It's, can you join this team of people who are trying to reach this goal? Right? Don't you want to be excited with us? Don't you want to help us reach this great thing? Just trying, I mean, even in just the way you talk about things, sometimes that can be more effective, and it's more sticky in people's heads. Oh yeah, no, I'm part of that project too. I didn't just like sign off on it and then I have to show up to a, quarterly governance meeting and hear what you've been doing.
And I'll also add, one of the other superpowers I think you guys leverage is the holistic approach to all of it, right? And painting that story, because I don't think that's as common as you would think it is, right? And I think having people kind of understand the overall impact and how these things connect together, right? The connected knowledge is a good place to get a lot of that buy-in.
It's true.
I'm interested to see how, as you expand your scope, this slide changes, because again, I think if you start to think about what's important to sales or professional services, they care about different things. They don't necessarily wake up in the middle of the night worried about whether or not there's going to be a problem with that in 6 months. But if you think about them having a motivation of, they bought this software to solve a business problem, and that's the thing that matters to them. And so consistently delivering on, this business process in a way that other people can leverage and we can do it in a consistent way has all those downstream benefits of then, if you only have 10 ways that something is configured instead of 10,000, your level of support complexity goes down and your ability to prevent issues goes down, and you start to connect those dots in a way that everybody sort of sees like value in the process. And that's part of what we've been trying to message is, we're going to try to sell more consistently so that you can implement more consistently. And when we're going to take feedback from you, and then that bridges to support, helping support, have customers, get the most out of what they bought, and as a result have fewer issues. Right? So you start stringing these things together, and your wave continues to the right on that diagram that you have up.
And Patrick, one of the things in that vein that I did to make inroads with the professional services team is say you have a fixed price service that you're going to provide. And on the backside, if you can get that thing done in 20 hours versus 200 hours, your margin jacks way up and you hit all your accelerators.
Yeah.
So you're going to get a guaranteed block of income based upon what we sell to the customers, but it's your job to go faster and smarter and quicker.
Yeah, it's the same
And
message
knowledge
we're
is
using
going to
in
help you do
sales.
that.
Right.
Yeah.
You can be involved in 10 deals instead of 2. Your revenue is going to go up for you. So people will get excited about that more than they do about writing documentation.
Yeah, what does it enable? What's the value? I mean, you brought that up first. You were the first person to say it on this call, Patrick, which was, what's the value? So what? Big so what? But yeah, I mean, one of the things when we were talking about incident management, that one example that I keep talking about where we're now getting to the end of that project, we were like, well, the salespeople will know what's going on when they pick up the phone. And so that was really powerful. And we were like, because of what these people are doing way over here that you don't know anything about, we're creating this through line of data. Therefore, these people will know what's happening. So that, there was that value chain was able to be talked about. So we're a little over.
Yeah.
I'll give it back to you,
session.
Kelly.
Thank you so much, Paula. Thank you so much, Christina. Thank you, everyone, for being here. What a wonderful conversation. Have a great rest of your day and come hang out with us again soon. Nice to see you.
Thank
all.
you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much, y'all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.